a dribble knock. Good morning. Welcome to the Community Service June meeting. We'll have roll call, please. Sorry. Okay. I do not have any sheets for public comment. Is there any public comment? Okay, don't see it. So we'll go to the minutes. The minutes from the May 15th meeting have been distributed through the internet to you. Any comments? Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Elizabeth? Ms. Dunbar? Mr. Payton is a second. Any comments? All in favor say aye. Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Next, we have a report by the county clerk, Mr. Hendrickson. Is there a motion to approve his report? Ms. Polk, is there a second? Ms. Dunbar? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
Good morning. Just one brief item. We do have a TV, VHS player, DVD player. We sent that out as an email to the department heads to see if there was anybody that had any use for it. We got no response. We don't need it any longer. I would like to ask for your permission to dispose of the equipment. Or make me an offer.
Are you looking for a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Dunbar moves to approve the disposing of it. Is that the motion?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Peters says second. Is there income from that? You're not paying anything. You're giving it away.
I will. Yes. Any offers?
Okay.
A garage sale this week.
So there's a motion and a second to dispose of the equipment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Motion carried.
Just one brief, I'm sorry.
Quick question.
Yes, Mr.
Is this stuff that can go to the garage sale that they come over at the highway department? Because I know he's getting ready to have one.
I have no objection to putting that over there if somebody, who takes equipment from over here to over there?
It's somebody in the county clerk's office. I'm not sure who that is, but
We can look into.
it's just a thought. Instead of the dumpster, why not put it there first? and then the
Absolutely have
dumpster?
no objections to that at all. I
Okay.
just, I don't need it anymore and I need to have it off of our inventory, but
Sure.
absolutely.
Maybe just make a quick call to Mark, and then
Yeah,
if
I can do that.
yeah.
Great idea. So, just wanted a quick reminder, after community services today, we are going to be down in the second floor conference room. We'll be doing demonstrations of some voting equipment. You're all welcome to stop down, please. We'll have some election judges there. We'll have pastries too. So please stop down. So that's all I had. So thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Like pastries, they didn't bring any. What's that all about?
Next have
lunchtime, I'll have sandwiches.
turn his on. Mr. Blair. You have in your packet the report of the assessor. Is there a motion to accept that report? Mr. Payton first and Mr. Stauffenberg second the motion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say aye, isn't it? You still, you say nay? You say
Yeah,
aye.
whatever you feel
You
like.
say, there aren't any of those. Motion carried. Okay, your microphone's on.
All right. Everybody hear me?
Yeah.
All right, great. Good morning.
Just a few things to go over with you this morning, and then I'll get into. So I was going to do the usual
Thank you.
state of the department monthly address, and then we'll get into the solar farm discussion after that. Just a couple of things that we completed during May and now actually early June. I did schedule the Farmland Assessment Review Committee meeting. That's going to be on June 27th, which is a week from tomorrow at 10 a.m. on the second floor. We'll do the normal topics there as far as getting the committee to use the certified values by the state for the PI values for the farmland. We're also going to have some discussion on solar farms. I know that's something that's pretty a big deal to the agricultural community. So that's probably my bigger discussion point for the year. If anybody wants to join us at the farmland meeting, it's going to be again Wednesday, June 27th at 10 a.m. on the second floor here in this building. So beyond that, we also did finally receive the detailed sales list for 2017 sales ratio study from the Department of Revenue. We reconciled that list with the state, and actually, even though if you have my list in front of you, I have it as pending, but Friday I did receive the final calculations of that study. So I do have 3 years stabilized, and I did get that out to the townships Friday afternoon, so they knew the percentage change that was required of each of them. So that's actually been completed as well. The other big thing that happens during May and all of May and early June is just the handling of outstanding tax bill issues. Everything that we are aware of as far as issues that the public has brought forth with their 17 bill payable in 18 has been dealt with. So I'm really proud of that. Happy that we're keeping caught up with those issues, because it's pretty easy to get buried in the month of May with that kind of traffic coming into our office. So just one other thing that's still outstanding, and it's typical this time of year, still waiting on the return of township assessment books. I do want to report, though, that I have reached out to many of those townships, and we are working on getting those numbers to us. That's the next step. Until I have those numbers, I can't get through the cycle to the point where I can equalize and we can go ahead and publish like we normally would in September. So that's my next step, is to just make sure we get those values in, and then we'll continue forward. Does anybody have any questions about those things before I get into solar farm legislation and the effect of the legislation?
Does anyone else? My questions are farmland owners concerned about their assessment with the solar?
Well, I've heard from some of them as far as what would happen with the solar farm value, and really that hadn't been completely finished until, and it really hasn't anyway yet because the governor hasn't signed it, but in the last few weeks it passed both houses, and so now we know what that's going to be. So it's a little bit, the conversation can shift to be a little bit more steady, so that I can give an actual answer rather than this is what I think might happen, but it could be this. It could have been a couple different things. I think we're on more solid ground now, so I can answer those questions a little bit easier, which should help me at the Farmland Assessment Review Committee meeting next week.
And what is it that's passed? What is it that's
Sure. The number, the fair market value per megawatt for land and improvements both combined is 218,000 market value.
Mm-hmm. And do you know how many tax bills were paid early do you know how many people did that process, paying their tax bills early?
Well, I think that's probably a question best
For
left to Nick
place.
Africano.
Sure.
He would probably have those numbers better than I don't. We don't actually collect the money, so I don't know who pays them early
Sure.
and who is still outstanding yet.
But you mentioned that there was some issues that had to be handled.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. The issues that we typically deal with in May, I probably didn't clarify that well enough. Would be if somebody forgot to come in and get their exemption, something like that, where the bill was printed without an exemption or something like that, and we can go ahead and do a correction to make that right. So everything that people have brought to us in terms of issues they had with their tax bill that could be fixed, we've kept up with that, and we're in good shape. But that's really what I meant was issues like that where exemptions were missing.
And when is your deadline for those books to be back, was my other question.
Statutorily, actually, the deadline would have been, excuse me, this past Friday. During the month of December each year, I hold an annual meeting with the township assessors, and at that time, I give them. I'm required to give them written instructions. As part of those written instructions, I do give them a deadline to turn in their books. It's not really a hard deadline where if you don't turn it in on that day, there's police going to show up at your door or anything. But I did give them till June 30th. Oh. I like that date because it's sort of like telling the township assessors, turn your books into the county, enjoy your holiday. We'll go ahead and take it from there and finish equalization and things like that. So that's why I've been in contact with them already to see if I can get some of those books in. Historically, usually they'll trickle in for about another month from now. So by the middle of July, I would think we'd be in pretty good shape. So I'll continue to reach out to them and see what the timeline is to get that accomplished. We are getting multiple townships now through import-export, which is rather than a written book, which is kind of nice. So I'm going to be working with the woman that designed that to see if I can get her to do the exports of those townships, and we can get that kind of rolling. That's a big part of it too.
Is there anyone else with a question? Okay.
Oh, one last thing before I get into solar, I was going to mention, once I got the 3-year study in and finished by the Department of Revenue last Friday, initially in February or March when I came to this committee, I gave a tentative calculation of about a 2.46% increase of value for the county total. Now that it's been certified by the state, I was off by just a little bit. It's not 2.46, it's 2.36 for the county. So I was off by just a touch. Yeah. I was really disappointed by that 0.1%. So I wanted to report that to the committee. Is there any questions about that before I move into solar farm? Okay. So in front of you, you should have a document that has 3 different tables on it. The first table shows the property tax as farmland, excuse me, as farmland for 2 different sizes of farm. One would be a smaller parcel, 20-acre parcel. The other a 400-acre parcel. You can see there, and I don't know how much detail you want me to get into each field, but you can see the assessed value of a typical 20-acre and a typical 400-acre farm, and take it through the calculation of combining it with a tax rate, coming up with a tax bill for a 20-acre farm is right around $300, actually on the sheet $301.91, and a 400-acre farm, the tax bill was $9,870.45. Then if you go over just a little bit further, I took it a step further and said, here's what the county's rate is, and the county's the contribution to the county, $36.39 for the 20-acre farm, and $1,170.17 for the 400-acre farm. So that's as of right now, prior to any construction of a solar project. If you go down to the next set, the middle table there, sitting on a 20-acre farm, if you put a 2 megawatt project, and remember that for solar, each megawatt's going to consume at least 6 acres of ground or so. So it's going to take at least 12 to 15 acres, maybe up to 20 to put that 2 acres or those 2 megawatts on there. The assessed value then jumps to $145,318 for the 2 megawatts. That's using the $218,000 fair cash value. So if you look there, you'll see I converted the $218,000 value to an assessed value of $72,659 per megawatt. That's why that number is in there. So when you combine that with the tax rate from above, you'll see a tax bill now on a 2 megawatt solar project would be somewhere, in the $13,701.74 idea. And then if you want to look at what the county, the contribution to the county would be $1,651.68. That's for both megawatts, 2 megawatts there. If you go to a much larger project, like a 70 megawatt project, the assessed value jumps to $5,086,130. The tax bill on that would be $487,581.85, and the contribution to the county would be $57,808.95. So that gives you an idea of just even with what I think is probably a very, very preferential value for solar per megawatt at $218,000 per megawatt, it is still a sizable increase in the taxes generated by these parcels when they get a solar farm constructed on them. So I did put together the third table, which is really probably more for my benefit because I'm kind of a numbers geek and I like to look at the way that things relate. So you look at the assessed value increase due to the presence of the solar farm. The 2 megawatt project increased the assessed value by $142,116. The tax dollar increase total was $13,399.83. The increase that comes to the county would be $1,615.29. And then that far right column is really for me, and I don't know if any of you are interested in this either, but I like to look at it. It's a 4,438.35% increase in tax dollar overall generation because of the existence of that solar farm, 2 megawatts. If we go to the 70 megawatt, just to complete this whole thing, and then I'll take questions or comments, the 70 megawatt project generates an additional $4,983,168 of assessed value. As far as tax dollars total, $477,711.40 additional in taxes. So that the contribution of the county is increased by $56,638.69, and the percentage of increase tax dollars is 4,939.81% increase in tax revenue because of the existence of that 70 megawatt solar project if that were constructed on a 400 acre farm or parcel. Any questions?
Mr. Lear is 13.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a small difference in the rate between your two examples.
Yes.
What brings about that difference?
Yeah, that was just simply because I chose in the 20 acre example, I chose one, I think, from the western side of the county. Actually, let me get that. I got that backwards. The 400 acre parcel came from more of the western side of the county. The 20 acre parcel came from the eastern side of the county. Both examples, though, came in the unincorporated portions of the county. So neither example has a corporate rate, a village rate, anything like that. But I did just try to mix it around and say, if one existed over here and one existed down here, what would it be? So I was just trying to get a representative rate either way, but that is the difference is that I chose two different sections of the county.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Stauffenberg?
Eric, I was just looking at your property tax as farmland is about $25 an acre on 400 acres is what I noticed. If you take the 9,870 and divide it by 400.
Sure.
And if you go to the solar one, it goes up to $1,200 and some dollars an acre. I just wonder if the farmers that are doing this realize that their taxes are gonna be $1,200 an acre, because I get these letters too,
Sure.
and they're offering about $1,200 an acre cash rent.
All right.
I don't know who's supposed to be paying the taxes, but
So,
all of a sudden you're broke even
That's a great point.
and lost your farm.
Now that I've gone through all of the information on that grid, let me back up and explain parts that are in that solar legislation that got passed. The biggest thing that I think a lot of people are interested in is the value per megawatt. That's why we got to that right away, 218,000 per megawatt fair cash value. But another thing that was passed in that legislation is the idea that at the project owner's expense, they are to give a survey to my department for the land that is going to be used for the solar farm. Once I get that survey, I will then have my mapping people do a separate PIN for the solar farm itself, not just for the improvements. It'll be for the land and improvements total. And that way, even though the farmer has not sold the ground to the project developer, the bill will go to the project developer themselves, and they should pay that bill. Now, that said, I think it's probably worth noting that even if you lease the ground and the bill is sent to the project owner, those that decide to lease their ground to the project owner, if the bill isn't paid, it's still their responsibility to pay it. So I would think inside that lease they should be careful and make sure there's language that protects them. And also, I would assume that the existence of that lease probably would allow for some kind of civil action to be taken if the bill wasn't paid, I'm assuming. But it probably depends on the language within that lease. So I would be very cautious about what's in that lease and make sure that my interests are protected if I'm the farmer.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, we have a cell tower on our farm, and we've been through that before, and my dad's name ended up in the paper 3 years in a row for not paying his taxes, because they are very, very delinquent in paying the taxes. The cell tower people.
Sure.
I don't know anything about the solar people, but. So, yeah, it was kind of an embarrassing thing.
Sure.
His name is in the paper, yet he wasn't supposed to pay the taxes.
Is there any other comments on that? Mr. Wheeler?
Thank you. I don't know if the committee's interested. I did have a call with ComEd yesterday about all of the solar projects, capacity. It's something I was going to mention to PZA, but if people want to hear about it, I won't pretend that that's a good use of their time. If they want to hear, they can let me know. But I will just, before that, I'll give an update. We've got 46, I believe, community solar projects, which is the first line under the 20 acres side of it. And we have one utility scale at 400 acres. And the 400 acre one is using no types of subsidy or credits. So that one's completely independent business model. The 20 are all, the state has a total of 450. And we've got obviously a nice percentage of those here. So there is information if you'd like me to pass it along. If not, we can wait till PZA. So you tell me.
Anyone wish to hear that?
We've got 46 of them, and the projected tax would be 1,600.
Roughly, the math is around, it's over $1 million total tax increase for all taxing districts. Obviously, the state pulls back what they give you on school districts. So if you get more tax, the state pulls it back. So not all of that is going to go, the school districts will be, but townships and other people will benefit on the tax base, the road districts, all of that kind of stuff. But this was more a call of how they're going to do citing these and approving these. And there's so many that they've gone to a lottery. So it was just information for if the committee was interested. If not, I can wait till tomorrow. So
Okay.
you tell me.
Some won't be there. So.
Okay, well, I'll try to make it Cliff Notes. Basically, 450 are in the community solar area right now. those have gone to a lottery system. Basically, if you're approved, when you sent them the check, everything, or sent the state the check, because they have to apply with the state for all of the state side of things, they'll basically, one out of every approved projects will get the credits and be approved from the state side of things. So 1 out of 7. Also, there's a limit on access to the infrastructure to get that power onto the grid. So not everything, it won't happen that everything that's approved here by the county and by the state will happen, because there could be 4 that won the lottery around one substation. So they can, and then they'll go by who put the check in to get on the waiting list with the state first, if that makes sense. So a lot of it became clear of why we have so many people rushing to apply, because really a small percentage of those community solar projects will actually make it through. So that I just wanted, it was enlightening, because they just changed the rules because they had so many people apply, and there's a finite number of megawatts available per the legislation. So that doesn't affect the utility scale. And as you see, the utility scale is about half of the tax possibilities that we'll see in the area. So that one solar farm for the 400 acre, that there's no lottery on that. So it looks like that one, if it makes it all the way through, would be about half of the potential revenue we would see off of it, if that makes sense. So it was really interesting to hear. It was 3 higher up folks for ComEd that were explaining this to us, and I asked Dell for the call, because some of the developers were hearing that the capacities used don't even apply. Well, that's not necessarily accurate. It's really potential capacity that is being, there's more applicants in the county than the grid will support, if that makes sense. But not all of those will get to that point of accessing that capacity based on a lottery. I don't foresee us getting none, but I don't foresee us getting them all, if that makes sense. So.
Ms. Peters, 15.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As far as the state credits, does that affect the real estate taxes? Does that directly affect us then?
As Eric was talking about, the tax increase will go up once there's an actual site there.
Right.
It passes engineering, all of that other stuff.
Right.
Then it's taxed on use, not on what the land is at that point. So it's basically, it goes to the per megawatt, and then that's up to the solar farm company to pay.
Right, but do the credits, are they taking that out of our real estate taxes? Will they get,
No,
I
I
guess,
think-
an abatement kind of thing on their real estate taxes? So we're looking at this and we're going, yeah, but then
No, it's
in
not
the
on the
end,
tax side, it's on the revenue side.
My understanding is I believe that's an income tax credit, not a real estate tax
okay,
credit.
that's
Yeah.
what so locally, we haven't offered any abatements or incentives, real
No.
estate tax-wise,
Nope.
that anybody knows of.
Not that I know of.
No, we that would have to be approved by the county board, and we haven't brought anything like that forward. Nor do I think we're in the position to offer those. That's just my own opinion.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Mr. Snipes?
So it's my understanding that because they're not, the land has a minimum tax upon it, that they are taxing for tax purposes. They are taxing the structure that is upon the land, or are they getting the revenue from when they generate the power?
We won't be. I don't believe we'll put it on the tax roll until the project is live. I mean, unless they let it sit there for so long that you can't ignore
But
it.
what are they taxing? Are they taxing the structure, that the actual solar panels, or where do we generate the income from? Because we're looking at the taxes, so they're taxing, like, if it was my property, they'll tax the house because
Right.
there's a structure.
Right.
So are they taxing those panels?
Sure.
Or
That's an interesting topic to get into. Actually, one of the bright spots of having the legislation is to avoid the discussion on what is real estate and what is personal. Having that number set at $218,000 fair cash value, that's for the land and improvements both, no matter how we want to break it out. If we want to go 50% land, 50% improvements, fine. If we want to go more on the improvements and less on the land, fine. So, to answer your question, I believe it's widely accepted that the panels themselves are probably personal property, but the idea is that the legislation sort of bypasses the argument of what is real estate and what is personal, because it's different in every county. I'll just give you a quick example. Lee County, when they did the wind energy legislation, and we tried to pattern ourselves after the wind legislation because it worked so well, the percentage of real estate for power generation in Lee County is about 25%. In Grundy County, it's about 95%. So it becomes very difficult to make a statewide standard if you try to make that argument. That's what this statute is at least partly trying to bypass. And both we understood that and the industry understood that when we did that. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, then as far as the real estate taxes, if it's ultimately if it's a lease, is up to the owner of the property to pay those taxes. But I can't foresee that they will put that kind of investment in the ground and let it go to somebody for taxes.
I would assume that's correct, but that's an individual decision on an annual basis as to whether or not they pay the bill. And that's why I had made the comment initially that really I think the landowner themselves probably should be vigilant about what's in that lease to give themselves some protection so that civil action could be taken if necessary. Mm-hmm. And that's a private agreement, though, that as an assessment official, we don't get involved in that. It's a private agreement between the company and the landowner, and it's really not for us to dictate to them how that's going to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue to dictate. I was just thinking of if the land was out there and they had the tax issue, I'm sure they're not going to let all of that investment go, to the tax rolls for $800. I think they would, in some kind of way, it would be protected, whether, because there will have to be some safeguards on their part to make sure that doesn't go, into
Sure.
any tax foreclosure. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Mr. Vickery, did you have?
Mr. Chairman. Much like the cable company industry did, because we had every little town doing a different agreement with cable companies, do you think that they will, as you use that illustration between those two counties,
Mm-hmm.
do you think the industry will go to the legislature to get an even playing field on those costs?
The costs of
Well, you used the two examples and differences between Lee County and I can't think the other county, but
Grundy
Okay.
has the highest percentage. Yeah.
that equalization. It would seem to me the industry would go to the legislature and get a common number that'd be used in all counties.
I'm not sure that they can. Well, I'm not saying they couldn't have that argument, but there is in the statute the like-kind rule of 1979, which states basically this is where the difference comes in from county to county. Whatever your county counted as real estate prior to 1979 continued to be real estate after 79. Whatever was personal property prior to 79 couldn't be real estate after 79. And that's why there's a wide varying difference between one county to the next. And when you try to make a statewide standard on a specific property like this and a project like this, it's really difficult to have that discussion on what the proper number should be without a standardized formula. That's why we did it that way. So I don't know. I mean, the legislature can do whatever they would do. I can't speak for what they would do. But given the past precedents of that and the existence of that like-kind rule of 1979, I'm not sure that the legislature is all that interested in making one flat percentage for everybody, because there's no number that fits in the box very well. And that would be at least my view at the moment, but I'd reserve the right to change that view if they go ahead and try to tackle that problem but I don't see that coming myself.
Thank you. One thing, another, just a comment or an observation. If you took 46 of them and multiplied them by the county tax of $1,650,
Sure.
it comes up to about $75,000 increase in property taxes. So that's really, I mean, that's nice, but it isn't what some people say we're giving those
Yeah.
use permits for money, you know, because you're only going to get probably half of those.
Sure. I mean, yeah, that's up to the individual. It's probably not life changing, the overall,
For
but
the county, I'm talking about.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, thank you.
hmm
But it's not a decrease either. So.
Pardon?
It's not a decrease either.
No, no, it's positive.
Anything else? Anybody else?
All right. Have a nice day, folks.
Very interesting. Thank you. And tune in more tomorrow. Is that? Yes. Next up, Julie's here. Julie Boudreau for Animal Control. Reports in your folder packet. Is there a motion to approve her report? Ms. Polk and second Mr. Vickery. All in favor of the report from Animal Control, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. Glad you're here.
Good morning.
Ah.
Good morning, folks. Are there any questions on my report? Just to touch base on a couple of things. You'll see that the registration is up quite a bit. I think I had stated in the last meeting or two that we had some outstanding registration that hadn't come in. You can see that that has come in, so that was really kind of a banner month as far as registration collection. And our bites, as I reported last month, we did have a positive bat that's reflective on this month's report. And I know Will County has had a couple already, so it is that season for people to be careful. We had one on Friday that had landed on a child's leg. It was urgent that we, on a Friday afternoon, immediately drive that up to Chicago or Springfield. So Chicago we went, which, you know, was just a long afternoon for that officer, but luckily that bat was negative. So we got the answer we needed to protect the child. As far as our animal population, still really moving a lot of animals out. Our owner reclaimed animals at 28. I found this interesting this month. You know, we usually don't get a lot of cats returned to owner, but it's increasing more than it was 15 years ago. But this month, out of that number 28, one of the interesting animals that was returned to owner was a very large snake. That's not something we do often. So as I looked at my numbers, I went, oh, a snake, okay. And I had recalled that, you know, yes, we had to pick that up and an owner did reclaim it.
Was it chipped?
Was it chipped? No, and we're always really happy to move those on quickly. If we, you know, we've gotten some before that we have no owner to, and we usually call the Chicago Herbological Society. There's a very interesting gentleman there. And he comes right down. He's really very interesting and always has some nice tales for us. So that's kind of fun. Any other questions on my report?
Okay. Mr. Lear, are you at 13?
Thank you. Animals handled to date, I notice there's a significant increase as far as total to date. Do you know any speculation on why?
Are you looking at year to date at the very bottom of the page?
Yes.
because for this year it's 409. Last year it was 582. So it's yes, there is a decrease there, and you know I really can't tell you where that number is, why it drives it. You know, there's that added amendment to the law last year that allows shelters to take in stray animals. That could be a a factor in that. I'm always hopeful that people are being more responsible for their pets, and we have less roaming and running around. So, and the fact that the village contracts, if the villages are not approving us to come in and respond to those animals, then that's going to affect that number as well.
Okay. Mr. Snipes.
I am looking at the funds submitted to the county treasurer, and I'm noticing with the impoundment, that's when is that an impoundment fee when you impound?
Yes, that is the fee that, as our fee structure, when you come in to claim your animal, you have an impoundment fee. You have sometimes running at large or board fees, fees and fines, whether you're, current or not current on registration, rabies registration and microchipping. But that impoundment fee is for that initial impoundment where, it's covering the cost of the officer responding to the call and coming back and bringing and processing that animal in, and really covers the initial vaccinations that we give all the animals as they walk through the door.
Okay, I saw that they're significantly up from last year. It was 350 the month total, and then you at 1,000, so very huge increase. I'm looking at the fines. You had 500 last year. The fines this year you brought in is 1,300. You must be having a busy year, or is it some fines increased? Or
we did increase some of those fines. If you may recall, early last year, those fees and fines went into effect in January. So the registration fees went up, the impoundment fees went up. Our service fees and our fines for no registration did not increase. So, the increase in that tells me that the animals that are coming through the door are not current on their rabies. Mm-hmm. So they're getting assessed a fine for that. What we do to ensure that they're in compliance is that it's given before they leave. We've had quite a few more come through the door on a second offense where we are mandating that spay and neuter when they go home. I think 1 week we had 4 in a week. So we are out there making sure that these animals are getting spayed or neutered on a second offense per our code.
Okay. Yeah, it looks nice from that. I was looking at the building. How is the overall project coming? I know the dream world and the world of reality, there's some variables, but what's the status?
I do have that on my agenda to give you a little update.
Okay, so then I'll wait for that to happen.
Okay. Anything else? I just wonder if you had any calls on heat, because we were feeling bad for heat for animals the other day.
We've had a couple responses, nothing urgent, thank goodness. I know I got a call from a colleague in the Aurora area that had a situation where somebody just weren't thinking and didn't do the right thing and left their dog, and before anybody could even respond or see it, the dog was already deceased. Oh. And the woman stated she didn't have an excuse. She didn't know what she thought. It's like it's going to be 108 in the shade. I don't know. But we have not had any urgent or super pressing issues with that. We've responded to a couple calls and easy corrections and making sure, again, we cannot force someone to bring that animal into an air-conditioned area unless, that if that animal is in distress and down, we can say they've got to get to a veterinarian right away. But as long as that animal has ample fresh water, nice shade to get into, they do not seem in distress. Mm-hmm. Chief of St. Anne called me yesterday and talked to me about getting a couple calls, and we discussed that situation. He said the dogs did not appear to be panting heavily. They had large buckets of water, they had shade, they had dog houses, and I said really that you can't force them beyond that. So
I'm really interested, Ms. Polk, in Mr. Lear and I worked with you one time about the Buckingham agreement, and I know there's a subcommittee, I think, working on that. Is there?
I think the AWAC committee is still trying to, we talk about that every month as far as the intergovernmental agreements, and it's worked really well with Buckingham. I think they appreciate that. We come out as soon as their citizens call.
It's just a good thing. I hope it continues. So.
I do too.
And then a follow up on the fairgrounds on that. Is that part of your legislation? Or,
Yes, I will cover that as well. So if there aren't any other questions on my report, I'll talk about the property first because that's really brief. We had approved that I can work with an architect. I have just a very small draft of a layout that he has envisioned for the property because the property is very narrow, 5 acres, but narrow. Certainly his vision for the layout wasn't anything that I had thought of, and that would be why he's the architect and I am not. But I do have a copy of it here if anybody would like to look at it or we want to pass it around. You're certainly welcome to see that. I hope to be speaking with him again soon to start looking at a little bit more of the insides, of the actual structures. I'm going to cross my fingers that maybe I can have something a little bit further. We have an event coming July 14th at our current animal control facility, and maybe we'll have a little more sneak peek then, I'm hoping.
What kind of structures was he thinking of adding?
Well, we have the 3 buildings there. We have the south side barn that's going to be used for large animals. We have the north side barn that will be used for garage, large equipment storage. We have the 3-car garage that doesn't have a specific purpose yet, but I have a lot of thoughts and visions for it, things that it could be used for. And then what he did was put a lay of going in and where parking would be and looking at this multi-phase process. If it's a matter of not being able to get the funding to do the whole project in completion, how are we going to phase that properly so that we can get there as quick as possible and yet set up opportunities to add on as funding allows.
Mr. Snipes, did you have any other questions about the building?
I guess the only question I have is if you take those into phases, there's an aggregate cost, and then there's what you got in savings or whatever to try to look at what vision you can start like right now. And when looking at that aggregate cost, what do you envision as to the completion? Because you got about 5 acres there.
We have 5 acres.
And so he's drawn out what the Taj Mahal would look like.
Very, very roughly, just from an aerial view, just in boxes. He has not gotten real in depth with a rendering. I think that's our goal, is to be able to get a color rendering. I think in past committees, I'm not sure that if you were here on that one, we talked about maybe talking to the Career Center and seeing if their students could maybe help in getting us a tabletop model for, future uses and interest in the community.
Oh, okay.
So we got a long way to go, but we're taking a couple baby steps, and I really appreciate that.
Oh, good. I was thinking that maybe there's a Christmas in April program out there somewhere where everybody just comes together and relay. Okay.
Good idea. Anything else? I think a rendering is a giant step from where it's been.
It
you have
is
a picture.
Yeah, it is, and I appreciate working with Mr. Jarvis. Legislative updates. There were several bills out there. The Senate Bill 2270 refers to the mandatory rabies for cats in Illinois. It has passed both houses. It has not yet been sent to the governor. That passed both houses on May 30th. I anticipate that it will be sent on up. The 5477 Animal Shelter Transfer Report, it looks like it's kind of probably gone by the wayside for this session. There was no action as of May 31st, and I think that was a deadline date. I think an amendment was pulled from another bill, and they tried to tack it onto there, and I think it gummed up the waters of that, so then it did not move any further, from as I understand it. The Senate Bill 2313, county animal safety funds, that puts all of the money collected by the counties back in the county where they belong. That has passed both houses on May 18th, and on June 15th it was sent to the governor. So we're hopeful that he will sign that, and we'll, get that taken care of. The reckless owner, I think originally I had given you a bill number of Senate Bill 3218. I apologize, that number, corrected number is Senate Bill 2386. And it really puts that definition and some language in there of holding the owner accountable for their reckless actions, and not always punishing a dog for doing what a dog will do. If they can get out, if they're allowed to run, they're probably going to, and putting that responsibility really with the owner. That has passed both houses, but has not yet been sent to the governor. And House Bill 4919, 4991, I believe, I apologize. That was talked about the immunity for citizens to break into cars. There's already language there that addresses that. There was a lot of concerns about liability and other things that could happen. That bill has died. There's been no action as of 5/31. So
that would be to break in to save a dog or save a cat. Is that
correct.
right?
And there's already language that addresses it. Again, I think it was discussed that, if an individual truly was, you were at that midnight hour and that dog was gasping, or, a child, you would do what you have to do. And it would probably be unlikely, that a civil jury would really punish you harshly for trying to do the right thing, without actually going in and making more language that would just may encourage people to be overzealous and do it, really not making sure that the animal truly was in imminent danger. As far as the swap meet, we did pass that ordinance 2 days before, 2 days after the May swap meet. So we went to the one June 3rd. And initially I had thought that, we would start seizing animals. We decided to take a little different approach and be very, very diligent on information and education out there. We had a team of us went out there at 5 in the morning, and we approached every person that had a dog or a cat, whether they were walking in with their own pet, whether they had them there for sale. If they had them there for sale and they had them on the ground, thank goodness it was a really beautiful, cool day. They were told to up off the ground into their vehicles. They could not talk to people about selling them. That was not allowed. Anybody that was there with their own dog, we told them that we had a copy of our ordinances with us and said this is no longer allowed. This is your last warning. The Pigeon Club did have some handwritten signs up that said no dogs or cats allowed, but as they approached, they still let them in. And we did have someone show up. In my opinion, I think that these folks came down hoping to get some attention. I think they have a bird refuge or something in West Union County, if I'm saying that right, and it's somewhere very far down south. I'm not even really sure. Hadn't heard of the area. And I think they raised these foxes that had been there in May, not the same people, but they also raise and sell these foxes. And this time they showed up with a monkey open on their shoulder. Monkeys are not legal in the state of Illinois. In 2011, a law was passed that put them on the dangerous animals list. If you had a monkey prior to April of 2011, you had to register it with your county in order to keep it. We do have a couple registered in our county. Beyond that, you are not allowed to purchase them or own them unless you have a severe mobility impairment. And in that case, you can have one capuchin monkey that must be trained through an accredited service organization. It is very specific in the law where monkeys can be, and a swap meet or a flea market is not one of them. I did talk to the state's attorney afterwards, and yes, we could have seized the monkey. Again, that was not my goal. We asked them to leave. The organization asked them to leave. They got very, very angry, very verbal, and the sheriff was called. The sheriff expressed concerns about getting into that fairgrounds if an emergency happened, if they had to get an ambulance in there. Because of the line of people that go from the fairgrounds to 57, and trying to get in there was really hard for them. I know one of the sheriff indicated that they were going to talk to the fair board and say, we've got to be able to have access to get in case there was a true, a real emergency. So they were asked to leave and escorted out by the sheriff's department. Again, I kind of think that they brought the monkey to just to get a rise, ruffle our feathers. But anyway, so when we go back in September, we will not have a swap meet now in July and August. We'll go back in September, and we will have somebody at the gate, and we're going to turn them away. If the club does not help us adhere to that, then citations will be issued. We hope that word is getting out there, and we won't have to be really doing much of that in September.
Mr. Wheeler?
Thank you. This sounds like a real zoo out there, but the question I have is the club somebody we can find as well? I can't remember from the
Yes.
ordinance. Okay.
Yes.
We can find the club and any individual.
Per animal.
That per animal. Okay.
Yeah, not even per vendor, but if that vendor has 6 animals, then they get 6 citations, and so do the
Right.
club owners.
Okay. Just want to make sure that we only regulate. You said you could have removed the monkey.
Yes.
Where's the line between what the Department of Ag has the authority to do? Because I had people complaining about birds, and Facebook blew up about other stuff that was out there. So I can talk intelligently about this when people ask. Where does your line stop and the Department of Ag takes over?
As this law and the animal welfare laws are always lovely and gray, I think if you're looking at a real humane care, neglect, abuse situation, we have some authority to step in and say, hey, this is not allowed. We had somebody that bought some chickens and they wanted to put them in plastic bags and hold them in their car until they left. We said, no, you need to take these home. These animals were just going to die in there. I'm not sure where the thought process that's okay to do. But we did say no. I have talked with the Department of Ag. I have invited them down multiple times, said, please, we'll be here to help you. Come and make a presence there. I've talked to DNR on that same level. I was told that in the May event, when there were foxes there was also a hidden alligator in a truck, and you got the hush hush, come back here. And I think that the event, the club members they know. I think they do know. So I think the presence of having the Department of Ag and DNR, I think could go a long way to help clarify that. As far as, I seen a goat he was kind of hogtied and the guy was carrying him. I don't think that's right, but I don't know that that's necessarily illegal, and I could say you must stop and untie that goat and cradle him in a manner in which most of us would like to see them handled. I do understand that a lot of these animals purchased there are being taken home for a food source for their families. I get that. I can live with that. It's the treatment and kindness to the animals up to that point, and when that animal then becomes that food source, I think there's the big difference in treating them kindly and humanely. you know, I can certainly ask for a legal opinion from the Department of Ag on exactly where that line is and how far can we go on these farm animals, if you'd like me to.
An opinion or active involvement?
I've asked for active involvement.
Yeah.
And maybe if I put in a request for because they have their own legal team down there with the Department of Ag, if I ask for a legal opinion of, you know, if you guys can't come and make a presence, then we need to know exactly where that line in the sand is in our community, so that we can provide the best advice and resources out there for the welfare of the animals.
I'd say it's a committee recommendation then at that point, so I would.
My consensus, we'll ask for that.
And that's what you would like, I'd be happy to do that.
Yes.
Okay.
So is there something else, Mr. Stauffenberg? 12?
Is our goal actually to make that done right or shut it down? I've been there. It is a zoo. You know, it's a zoo. And I've actually bought some goats there one time, put them in the back of my car and brought them home. They squealed all the way home. But at any rate, you know, I don't think the fairgrounds, I've had several calls from board members and Tammy out there, they're not sold on having that there at all. They must pay rent, the club must pay rent to use it.
I'm sure they do. I don't know what that cost is.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I guess I'd really be interested in knowing just how many people come through those gates. They charge $3 a head to the citizen that's just coming in to shop. They charge more for vendors. They charge even more if you come in with just animals. If you come in with a truck, more if you come in with a truck and a trailer.
Right.
So I'm sure it's a pretty lucrative endeavor for them, and it's really the responsibility falls on the fair board. If they don't want that event there, I'm sure they could certainly say.
Yeah. Well, I just wondered if our goal was to make sure that it's done right or to try to shut it down.
You know, I think when the gentleman came initially, when we first talked at the committee here about an ordinance, that's what they said. You're trying to shut us down. And at that day, I said, no, I'm trying to address the situation with domestic animals and hope that you will improve the presentation and care and treatment of any other animals that are there. I think that, you know, this has been around for decades, and, you know, maybe there is a need for a place for farmers to go, small farmers, and to buy animals like this, but they do have it within their power to manage their organization and do better practice.
Yeah.
They just have to want to do it, and they have to follow through.
Yeah, I've seen some skeptical things going on out there, and just curious what our goal was. But I've talked to Tammy at the fairgrounds several times, and they're not, you know, dead set on us shutting it down. I mean, they don't care if we shut it down.
But it'd be ideal if it could be managed well there
Right.
under your supervision instead of
Yeah.
someplace else that we don't have any
True.
access to.
True, because I think they'll pick up some other spot.
Yes, some
Yeah,
other
'cause
county.
in our county, then we have an ordinance to cover that. If they leave our county, then that's not something that we can cover. And they do hold these Grundy May or Kendall. I'm not sure which other counties have them, but they are out there.
Yeah.
But we can only handle or manage what's in our own county.
Any other comments? Janice, Ms. Peters?
Okay, I want to thank you, Madam Chairman, compliment you on your efforts to educate rather than to slap citations onto people. I think in the overall scheme of things, that will improve. You know, not only are you going to improve our area, but they're going to get in the habit of doing things better just because you're requiring it here. So I want to compliment you on that. That being said, can you comment on the incident with the puppy that was picked up by animal control and 2 police officers, sheriff's police officers? I got actually a couple of calls that people were concerned. They're like, why would they send out sheriff's police to pick up a puppy?
That was a situation that happened that a individual picked up a puppy. They called our office and said that they were concerned about the puppy's health. They were concerned about handing it back to an owner if an owner came forward. They stated if we wanted them to bring the puppy to us, they would. We said yes, that would be best. That way we can document and notate initial health of the puppy. We can hold an owner accountable if an owner comes forward. And after a small period of time, the individual called back, stated they had talked to other people and that they felt there was nothing mandating them, that they didn't have to bring the puppy to us, and they were not going to do it. They asked for specific language, and my shelter manager stated that, you know, she needed to look that up. If they would come on in, she would be happy to provide that. They were very adamant. Their demeanor and disposition, according to my shelter manager, who I work with daily, I trusted her judgment, did a 180 from I'll bring it into you to no way, no how. And oftentimes, if we feel that a situation is getting difficult, or you know, we have no idea when we go to someone's house just how angry, what kind of resistance or violence we may be met with. We often have to call police out. Sometimes we know ahead of time and go, we need police. Mostly we just want their presence there for safety for our officers, first and foremost, just to keep the peace. And really that's all they went for on that day as well. Because the conversation and the demeanor did a 180. When my officer went out there to get the animal, we felt it best just to have an, you know, officer on scene for keeping the peace and providing assurance to my officers as I send them out. You know, they've been out on properties where shortly after, you know, within a week or two, all of a sudden there's been a triple homicide at that residence. We, you know, respond to places where all of a sudden we find out, usually after the fact, that there's some, you know, some really scary situations that my officers walk into. My officers do not carry firearms. You know, I do everything in my power to make sure that my officers are going to go home every night.
Oh, I guess I felt like she called you, you know, to say that she had the puppy and she was taking care of it. So did you feel that the puppy was in danger at some point, that it had to be picked up? I mean, and if you were going to bring out officers, maybe you could have specified that that's our policy. You know, we don't know the situation. We're bringing out officers with us. I don't know. She just felt pretty. She made statements on comment and on Facebook, and like I said, other people were kind of, well, you know, if I find a puppy, then I don't call animal control because they'll send out cops to come and pick them up. You know, and she was just trying to do the best thing for the puppy, and she felt like she wasn't treated very fairly. And I don't think that the puppy was in danger. But I understand that you're animal control officer, but I think it escalated. And I thought we were making some good progress on things, but but you did explain why. But can you understand why a person, you know, if you came to my door with 2 officers, I'd feel very intimidated. So
yes,
but I think
we discussed this in the advisory committee. She was there. I told her I would be more than happy to sit down. Told her more than once, my door's open. I'd be happy to sit down and discuss this, and you know, try to make sure that the communication and things that we can do going forward. I think if we both went back to that day, we both on both sides could have maybe made a couple different decisions that would have resulted in a more positive outcome. Certainly there have been times when people take animals in and they just simply disappear. You know, I see it on social media all the time. I found a dog. Oh, I'll take it. Give it to me. I'll take it. And there's, you know, some real concerns there. It was last year in Chicago on social media that dogs were found, and somebody said, oh, they're mine. And they handed them to this person, and they went and threw them off of a 5th floor garage. One died. I mean, you just don't know. And
Right, but I don't think you should assume that there's that many bad people out there. I know you see probably the worst of the worst, but I think most people have good intentions. What were the circumstances that the puppy got transferred right away to Decatur? And did your office take it down there, your department?
no, the puppy didn't get transferred right away. It stayed for a legal hold. And actually, you know, we had to make sure that it was cleared medically, cleared from a legal hold. We transferred the puppy to one of our shelter partners that come regularly to us. They were coming down to take a few other animals, so we allowed that one to go as well. We transfer probably majority of our animals out as opposed to spending time and resources on adoptions and adoption fairs. And this was normal, regular, routine activity to us. This shelter partner is actually up north, and they are very active with us. They take on medical cases. We had a heartworm dog, a mature dog here recently that we've had in the shelter for a couple months. We could not get anybody to, you know, take that dog on, and they stepped up and came and got that dog as well. So they've really, they take the good, they take the bad, they take the old, and they were coming anyway, so that dog was transported or transferred to them. Okay. via their services.
Okay, would you have called, or do you call the local shelters first to see if, you know, there's an opportunity to send them out to the local shelters?
We do sometimes. I mean, we put it out there when animals are available. You know, with the recent dog that I said went up there for heartworm treatment, the one shelter, you know, turned it away. They told us they would come. They told us we'll come the next day and see it. They never came. And yet when this puppy situation was a hot topic, they were on our doorstep. I really don't feel that that our department made any wrong decisions in allowing this animal to be transferred like many of our other animals are.
Right, I was just clarifying why and what procedures that you followed to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when the shelters say, I'm sorry, we're full, and they're turning away owner surrenders, and we've got other partners up north that are just, opening their doors readily to us, driving down to pick them up, I can't see any reason for saying no and letting them go. It's really what's in the best interest of the animal, and if it can get adopted much quicker and into a home through a shelter that's out of our area, that's again in the best interest of the animal.
Okay, is there any financial transaction there at all? Do you pay them or they pay you?
Not generally. I mean, they're taking on a lot of medical expense, especially for taking the heartworm treatment dog. They have to then do the treatment on that dog. But no, generally we don't with any of the shelters that we transfer animals to. They generally don't pay us for them or anything like that.
Can you tell I had a couple questions? I mean, from people on this.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good questions, good answers. And the first answer is if someone finds a pet, they are to contact you.
I think
it isn't a pet. If they find a stray dog.
Yes, I think they should. The law does state that they can take it to a shelter, and there's specific guidelines for that. I know that I am talking with the state's attorney to maybe help see what kind of language that we can maybe put in place to help better clarify what people are to do. It's not a goal to tell somebody, don't you ever help a stray animal, but it is a concern that people are running around. I can't tell you how many times individuals tell me, well, I rescue dogs. Oh, okay. What organization do you work with? Oh, I just rescue them. There are concerns, and we want people to do good things, but we want people to do the right thing. And I certainly don't want anybody to ever come to me and say, well, this person picked up my dog and now it's just gone. They said it's gone, and I have no recourse to help that person.
So that's your biggest concern, is that it belongs to somebody. It's not a stray dog after all. Huh?
Yes.
Okay. So.
Stray is one thing, but you know, most of them are owned. This puppy was friendly. It wasn't feral.
Was it owned?
Nobody came forward,
Nobody came forward.
but that happens quite often.
Okay. Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you. I did talk to Julie, I think the day or the next day after the incident that Mrs. Peters was talking about. The part that gets skipped over here, and that not bothers me. It's just something that is going to be, it's just going to keep happening, is that gray area between when the phone call came in and said, tell me what allows you and gives you the authority to demand this animal, and then the trigger to go pick it up. Okay? It's my understanding that the law doesn't specifically say that you have that authority. There's a gray area there that is undefined, but it doesn't say that somebody else has the authority to rescue animals on their own without the involvement of other. So it's almost like there's an omission there on these statutes that nobody really knows where they stand. The discussion of right and wrong and what they should do, then there's the discussion of when do we send the sheriff's police out, because they come with legal. They don't come with should, want, right, wrong. They come with a violation of law, in my opinion. And that's where I think that we are walking into a wood chipper if we don't figure that out, because we are never going to get to the point of trust with the public. And I don't know how to get to that point, to be honest. I would just say that I hope we don't react, and I think that's where you're talking about things could have been done different on all sides. Someone could not have dug their heels in. We could have not just said, okay, send the police out there. I think that if we're going to do things, there better be more than just this one situation with this one animal, because it causes a lot of trouble, that we should probably pick our battles better, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean your heart's not in the right place. But I think we went to war over one situation when there should have been a bigger prize at the end of that. And that's my own opinion, not speaking for the committee or anybody else. But I hope the committee realizes that we're in this gray area where we think we have the authority, and the law says we're the ones who do this, and you can explain more about that. But then there's also, the law doesn't say, but somebody else can't. And that's where we're at, you know. So I just want to explain that, but I do think that we need to do a better job of we're doing the best we can customer service wise, but it'd be nice if our employees knew where that line was. So.
If I can elaborate on that, and that's exactly what I told Chairman Wheeler, looking at the laws that I review, and I have to go back to them. I can't always pull them right out of my hat, but I pretty much know where to go. Sometimes it takes a minute to find it. In the Animal Control Act, it gives us the authority to pick up stray animals. I think there was a lot of concern throughout the state of shelters taking in strays. I was asked by the Department of Ag at one time, what gives animal control the authority to take in an owner surrender? You're supposed to be picking up strays. That's exactly what they told us. And we said, well, we take in owner surrenders under the guidance of the Humane Care Act, because the Humane Care Act addresses shelters who are supposed to be taking in owner surrenders. So that, you know, the gray is just, probably the entire acts need to be started over and rewritten. However, this is what we have to work with. And so about a year or so ago, they amended the Animal Welfare Act, even though the Animal Welfare Act tends to deal with breeders and pet shops, but they amended that act to say if an individual finds an animal and they want to take it to a shelter, they can. The shelter is then supposed to very specifically report to us. It must be turned over to us if there's a chip, an ID, a tag, or something found. We can ask for the animal, and in our ordinance it specifically says you shall turn the animal over unless we give a waiver to say you can keep it. Again, this situation, this individual stated, and even in a statement that she read at the meeting, that she had already called a private shelter and they said, we'll take it in under our umbrella and you can foster it for us. Gets even more complicated because the head of that shelter had told me in my office just a month or two before that they were no longer doing their dog program, and the individual that gave this permission was not allowed to take any dogs in. So it you know, a lot of these things are why we responded in the way that we did. And as Chairman Wheeler said, even though this law says you have the authority, this law says this organization can do it under this authority and this guideline, nowhere in the law does it say, but an individual is strictly prohibited. It kind of puts that implication that this is your job and that you can do this too, but it doesn't specifically say. And I'm going to try to work with our own state's attorney on a local level, and I would like to talk to some legislators in a next session to try to say, look, throughout the state, this is a concern and a problem. You know, we addressed this a year ago on the confusion with the shelters. Maybe we need to address it a little bit clearer for the citizens, so the citizens know what they can do and how they should respond, who should be notified when something like this happens.
And that's why I wanted to compliment you. Oh, thank you, Mrs. Chairman. Compliment you on the education then, because even you admitted that you had to look up some of these things. Well, they don't have it at their fingertips, you know, to look up. And if you ever go into the county site, everything's there. It's really not that easy to find. So, you know, I appreciate that that's the direction that you're taking. And I think that, yeah, it's going to take some time to heal, you know, and that wasn't a good situation, but let's use it as a learning experience. That's why I brought it up, you know, for you to explain a couple different things. And but yeah, so keep going on that line of education, because I think that's going to help everybody involved.
Thank you.
And there isn't any more fervent people than pet owners. Right?
We're all passionate.
It's all passionate, and then humans come involved, and we get another problem. Okay, Mr. Snipes, you have something to add?
Make this real brief so that we can get the next person up. There's a difference between peace officer and police officer. A lot of times in domestic situations, you have to take a common sense approach to it or whatever. If you reasonably believe that, you know, you want to basically keep the peace, just because the police officer shows up does not mean that the law has been broken. Sometimes you can ask, and I will do that if I'm unsure, if I'm going to a parent's house and the individual tends to be very aggressive in conversation, whatever, in order to make sure that nothing escalates. And I reasonably believe that there's going to be some, it could be a situation that could erupt to something else. You have an officer there. The officer is the peace officer until you make them a police officer. That makes sense.
Good comment. Thank you. Anything else? Anything else? No? That's all I have. Thank you for all your presentation today, then. Okay, next, we have the recorder's report. Skip. Otherwise, is there a motion to accept that report? Ms. Dunbar, is there a second from Ms. Dunbar? Mrs. Pope. All in favor of accepting report, say aye. All in favor, say no. And the motion carries. Okay.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Any questions on last month's report?
Looks
So-
busy, right? Looks busy.
Yeah, we actually, June is turning out to be exceptional. So things are progressing and moving in the right direction as we had kind of predicted. Just to give you an update on office activities, we participated in Law Week out at KCC, and we last week participated in the Senior Fair at the Quality Inn through the State's Attorney's Office. Our property fraud promotion that we've been going around and doing, we are now up to 1,607 individuals signed up for Property Fraud Alert. Last week we did 62 at the Senior Fair, so things are catching on and going well with that program. Other than that, the staff just continues to keep working on backlog, doing an exceptional job, working on current work, assisting customers, and then working on the older images and indexing. So kudos to them for staying on track, and it's really about all I have right now.
Is there a question from someone? did anyone ever report there was fraud on their property?
Oh, yes. I 2 months ago had to go and testify at the grand jury to issue some warrants for 2 individuals on a property, County West, and then last month I was contacted by a person whose own family member has manipulated the property in their own name. So just continuously working on stuff like that, and utilizing the ordinance that this committee, worked with me on and brought to the full county board and passed, that allowed me to go directly to the courts when there is a fraudulent activity happening. So it's working, and we're helping people keep their property when it's wrongfully taken.
And the other, where we had discussed everything that you receive has to have the numbers on it?
Yes, so the PIN number and the common address ordinance that the county board passed will take official effect August 1st. We're giving all of our customers plenty of time to create a better habit of putting that information on all their real estate related documents. And so, yes.
It's wonderful. I mean, that you need a number in order to be accurate, and one little number off can throw off.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So other than that, things are going well.
Good. Is there a question somewhere? Okay. That means you're
Have a great day,
doing
everyone.
well. Thank you so much. Okay. Is there any old business to report? Any new business to report? Is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Payton? Is there a second? Mr. Stauffenberg? All in favor say aye. You're adjourned.